it was a time where I felt like I should have it more together, and I just really didn't. Oftentimes people in their Saturn return feel like they're behind. They feel like, oh my gosh, I should be so much farther than I am, or I should have met my person by now. I should have, gotten that promotion by now. Or they could also feel like they're questioning everything that they have ever known or some integral pieces of their life. It is very human to lose ourselves sometimes, and need that reminder and need the handhold to walk back to ourselves. So it's such an important conversation. Our body is the antenna, of our life. It's picking up on so much. It's sending us messages. It is so intuitive. It is like of God. I shared some stories that, were very hard for me to share, like a lot of shame around money in my 20s, but I think it's important. So many people have shame around their money and debt and handling money, and so much stuff comes up when you're an entrepreneur. Like, it is going to be a mirror for all of your stuff, and to do it with your best friend, that's like double whammy. So, it wasn't always easy. We definitely bring up a lot in one another, but for a purpose. That's why we're together. That's why we're best friends. That's part of being in a conscious relationship, is that you're going to bring some stuff up for each other in a real way. And it's not always going to be comfortable, but you just know on a soul level that you must stay and you must grow through this.
Welcome to Meditation Motel, where we slow down, unwind, and explore the mind. Here, we dive into my guests' inner worlds, the challenges they face, and their unique journeys with mindfulness and maybe meditation. This is a space where we not only listen, but experience. Here, we check in, not just to a place, but to our own breath, our own bodies, and our own awareness. And today, checking into Meditation Motel is Lindsey Simcik, a podcaster, author, and co-founder of the globally beloved Almost 30 podcast, which she launched with Krista Williams during their Saturn Return. And what began as closet floor conversations in LA has evolved into a top 50 wellness and spirituality platform with over 120 million downloads, retreats, events, and a newly released book. Lindsey's creativity, honest vulnerability, and commitment to exploring spiritual growth and meaningful connection have inspired a worldwide community. And today I'm so excited to explore how meditation, mindful rituals, and inner reflection have kept her grounded through career changes, personal growth, and creating a purposeful life, from performing on stage to podcasting and motherhood. So, Lindsey, whenever you're ready, you can close your eyes. And together we're going to do a little heart chakra meditation. Just bring awareness to that space. Feel your heart beating. And if you want, you can put your hands on your heart and imagine how right by your heart chakra there's a little green soft light. With each inhale, it gets brighter, and with each exhale, it expands. And whenever you're ready, open your eyes. So is meditation something you practice regularly these days, or has it been quite a while?
It's definitely changed over the years. I became a mom almost 2 years ago, and, my 2-hour morning routine and spiritual practice has definitely simplified and become something that doesn't take up as much time in my day, but it's really changed in the sense that, now my walks are my walking meditations, and I have, that 5-10 minutes before bed where I'm able to meditate, connect with my breath, or I sit in front of my red light and I'll have a meditative moment. It just looks different and it's a different amount of time, but I definitely still have a connection to that practice.
So when you meditate, do you prefer guided practices or sitting in stillness, sometimes yoga?
It's kind of like when you go into Spotify to listen to podcasts. It's like, what mood am I in? Do I want to laugh or, do I want to be inspired? And the same goes for meditation. Sometimes I don't want something in my ear, to be honest with you, and I would much rather just sit in silence. But then there are days when I love to put binaural beats in my ears. That really helps me to drop in. And then I love guided meditations. I really love the Open app for meditations. I love, they're not considered meditations, but they're called activations on the Activations app. So that's another just like mindfulness modality, I suppose. But it depends on the day,
That makes sense. Beyond meditation, is there any other mindfulness practices you return to, like even on a daily basis, like journaling, for example? After my meditation, I really like to journal to just get everything out of my head and onto paper, or breath work. Do you have something that you need on a daily basis?
Yeah, I love journaling, but it's one of those things that I get to do when I have time and when I've carved out time for myself. So it's not an everyday thing. However, when I am able to do it, I remember just how powerful it is to be able to take what's going on up here in my mind and actually allow it to drop into my heart and pour onto a page. And the clarity in writing is just so much different than like speaking it out, and so much different than just letting it float around in your head. So this is a good reminder to return to my journaling practice on a consistent basis. But other mindfulness practices, I think for me, again, it's changed. I'm a mom now, and playing with my son in the morning or at night, is a mindfulness practice, to be as present as possible, to really enter into his world without the need to say anything, fix anything, judge anything, criticize anything, is just a really beautiful mindfulness practice that I feel like is changing me in many ways.
I can imagine. Also just connecting with each other without words. Because mindfulness, you always think about it as a practice you do by yourself. So connecting with your child must be a whole different experience. I can't even imagine at this moment, but especially in the morning,
beautiful.
taking that time together.
It's the most special. And I think it's important. I think Gabor Mate talks about this, like one of the most important things you can do for your child is to 20 minutes a day enter into their world. You can talk if they talk to you, but don't bring your opinions or thoughts or whatever into this moment. Allow them to bring you into their world and be a part of it. And it's just such a special thing that I remember as a child, when my parents would truly play with me, they were in my little world I had created, and it was just such a special thing. So it's something I just really delight in.
Especially nowadays with social media, I see a lot of young women on playgrounds here in London on their phones, to just kind of put your phone into your pocket, into your purse, and just be present without being connected all the time, just for the child's sake as well.
That could be a whole podcast. I have so much to say about it.
Yeah.
And I understand the pull. I understand the addiction we have to our phones, to social media. It is a real addiction. And I think we need to call it out more, because our children need us. I would liken it to, and my friend Peta Kelly talked about this recently, and I had been thinking about it, and the way she put it into words was just so beautiful. But, we talk about, maybe a parent drinks too much and they can't really be present for and engage with their kids in a healthy way. It's not so different when you are fully in your phone, not giving your children attention and not attuned to them. So it sounds kind of extreme, but it's really true. And I don't even think we know the effects of it yet. So it's something that I'm really aware of practicing, and I'm not perfect at it, but I really don't want my phone to hold that power over me.
You're also out in nature most of the time with children, so it's also something for you to tap into that presence again, connecting with nature. It's like for both, not just for the child.
Yes. Agreed.
So before we dive into all the exciting things happening for you now, like your book, I kind of want to rewind a little bit. So I want to kind of talk about your Saturn return, where everything began for you with Krista. So you met Krista, your best friend and podcast co-host. You launched Almost 30, and you kind of stepped into a whole new chapter of your life. So what was it like looking back on that time now? Was there like a moment during your 20s, maybe kind of like a rock bottom, that made you realize something big was shifting?
Yeah, I mean, if I knew that I was going through my Saturn return while I was going through it, I mean, I would have felt so much more empowered and hopeful. But at the time, I really felt like my life was falling apart. For those of you listening that don't know what your Saturn return is, I'll just give a very brief high-level overview of what it is. So astrologically speaking, every 29 and a half years, the planet Saturn comes back to the place it was in the sky when you were born. And this is significant because Saturn is a planet that you consider is like your cosmic dad. You know, he walks into the room and he loves you dearly, but he's going to show you some tough love. And he's going to say, you know, these are the aspects of your life that are misaligned. And, you know, I'm going to make it really obvious what those are. And it's going to be a little chaotic and painful and might feel like everything's falling apart. But this is your opportunity to really become who you are and put your life together in a way that is you, not what your parents wanted for you, not what society wanted for you, not the conditioning, like truly you on a soul level. And so it's a mini death in a lot of ways, but man, it is one of the most potent times in your life, I believe, and can really set the tone of your relationship with change. Because, you know, spoiler alert, you're going to experience change many times throughout your life, all the time. And so how do we meet it? And how do we collaborate with it? So that's the high level overview. And when I was going through my Saturn return, I mean, I had just got out of a long-term relationship, a relationship that I thought was going to be my person. I thought I was going to marry this person. And I ended up, you know, ignoring the signs that, you know, this wasn't my person. And I didn't have the tools to communicate with him, so I ended up blowing up the relationship by cheating on him. And in the wake of that, I was just so depressed and just felt like I had betrayed someone I loved and also betrayed myself, you know, for many years. And then at the same time, I was in a lot of debt. I was working many jobs and just trying to survive in New York City and then in LA. And it was a time where I felt like I should have it more together, and I just really didn't. You know, I thought I should have it figured out. I thought I should have been married by 27 and had kids by the time I was 29, you know, and I just didn't. And so, you know, my move from New York to LA, I believe, was such a huge, I would say, catalyst to my awakening and growth at this point in my life. And that move, first of all, was just such a bold decision, and a decision that I knew was right for me in the moment. Someone, you know, at the time I was working for Soul Cycle, they called me one night and asked me to open a studio on the West Coast. And I didn't hesitate. I said, yes, I'm in. Okay. I'm going to be in LA in a month. Like, how? I don't know anybody. I don't know, you know, there was just so much unknown, but I just knew it was the right choice. And from there, you know, it's not like it was perfect. I got out there and was still in debt and just trying to recover, and was chasing after, you know, men who were just, you know, mediocre as far as their respect for me and, you know, the time that they would give me. And yeah, it was messy for a little bit, but I was exposed to through the podcast and through my relationship with Krista, just so many opportunities for growth, so much wisdom from guests and experiences. Like it was a big wave, of just awakening, and I was awakened to the fact that I have a soul and I don't have to do this by myself. I don't have to shoulder it all, and it was just a really, really beautiful understanding eventually.
Well, let's say when you moved from New York to LA, how old were you there?
I was 27. So that was like, I would say leading up to my Saturn return.
Yeah.
And then when I was in LA, it was like, really the height of my Saturn return, those early years in LA. And I met Krista basically, I forget the date, but it was right around when my Saturn return started. So just like really profound when I look back. And our relationship has just been, a catalyst for an insane amount of growth.
Well, I'm basically right in the middle of my Saturn return. It's so funny. I have to tell you, I did the calculator on your website this morning because I knew I was in it. I'm 28. I'm going to be 29 in a few months. So I'm in the middle. So it started around May, I think, and goes until September. And then it would continue in February, I think.
Yeah.
So that's when the main thing starts. So it makes a lot of sense for me now. So it's really interesting to talk to you about it because I was wondering what some of the signs are that maybe are overlooked sometimes, especially if someone has never heard about Saturn return before. What would you say are the signs that you're fully in? Because I have been, when did I tap into spirituality? Maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, quite early on, because I kind of stepped into a more extroverted career. I wanted to be a radio host and I worked in radio stations and I was like, oh, this is not me. I'm such an introvert. So I struggle with a lot of anxiety, and meditation was really something that helped me a lot. So from there, COVID hit. So I took kind of a deep dive. I read Eckhart Tolle. I did all of the meditation courses in the world. So I feel like I've started this journey quite young. So now I feel like a new urge, kind of like now I feel like, I want to start my own business, and like
love that.
Maybe my confident self is coming out a bit more. And just to come back to the question, what would you say were the signs?
It's different for everyone, and I'm excited to talk to you about yours, and I'll speak to that in a moment. But oftentimes people in their Saturn return feel like they're behind. They feel like, oh my gosh, I should be so much farther than I am, or I should have met my person by now. I should have, gotten that promotion by now, or they could also feel like they're questioning everything that they have ever known or some integral pieces of their life. Like, do I want to be with this person for the rest of my life? Or, man, the friends that I've had for a long time, like I'm just not feeling like our relationship is just like connected and resonant and aligned for me anymore. Or, wow, I've been in this city my whole life. I'm kind of feeling called to go elsewhere, but that feels scary. I'm unsure if it's the right thing to do. It's a lot of inner turmoil, a lot of questions about like, man, I thought I was sure about this, but I'm not. And it can present as chaos and, again, feel like your life is falling apart, but it's really coming together. And I think in your case, it's a great example of, you're someone who found spirituality prior to your Saturn return, because spirituality is such an important piece of this experience. There's like no doubt about it. We talk about it in the book. But because you found it prior, I can imagine that your Saturn return is going to feel at times uncomfortable because you know that you're being asked to expand and kind of take it to the next level of who you really are. And so it's not going to be, I don't believe, as painful as maybe someone who has not like met that spiritual self yet, because I do think there's some comfort and guidance there that really kind of smooths out the experience. But I think for you, it just feels like you feel that call. You hear that voice of like, there's more.
It's
I'm
so
made for
loud.
more.
Yeah, it's really, really loud. Also, I wanted to talk to you about friendships because friendships has been such a big topic in my life since I moved to London. So I have most of my friends back in Germany. I met my husband really early on here. So I haven't really made a good feminine connection again. I have really great friends in Germany and I have a really great family, so I'm able to travel back and forth. But that was also something where I kind of maybe obsessed over, maybe the friendship topic. So I could tell now that my life, because I'm really open still and I'm trying to meet people, but I can tell that the universe is dragging me into, no, you have to start your own business. Like it's always pulling me. It's so loud. And I really have to explore this, which is very interesting because I've always been very curious about things, but I've never heard it that loud. So this might be the case.
It's a big one. And it could be the unlock to those friendships, like maybe you're going to be meeting more like-minded people through this venture and just those that are going to help you make this a reality. Like they could become really close friends or I think relationships can come in different ways. I think sometimes as adults, we find it really intimidating to make new friends because we're like, oh, we have to like go up to them and ask them if they want to grab coffee. Maybe you go to your favorite yoga class every single week and you just make a point to like strike up conversation with people and see who you vibe with, or you go to your favorite cafe every single week and just read for an hour and drink your coffee and like see if anyone's energy really like just catches your attention, because it's all energy, you know what I mean? Like, and I think other people are seeking friends too. And so I do think it's important to be the one to go first and just be like, oh my gosh, like, your dog is so sweet. Like, what kind of dog is this? Or, oh, where do you live in the neighborhood? Oh, cool. I actually live down the street. Like, would you want to grab a coffee and maybe take the dog for a walk sometime? It's like that. Yeah. Like, you have to start the momentum. And if you're on the receiving end of that, initiation from someone else, amazing. But like, you got to be the one.
So how did you connect really with Krista? Was it like one of those once in a lifetime things? Did it just click, or did you guys go through a lot as well?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I've never had a friendship like this where, we were connected by a mutual friend. We tell a longer story in the book, but basically at the time she wanted to audition for SoulCycle and I was auditioning for SoulCycle, or I was teaching SoulCycle. And so I was going to help her with her audition. And in our first FaceTime call with each other, she was living in New York at the time. I had just moved to LA and I gave her all my tips and tricks, but we just really connected. Like I was like, oh, this girl is cool. And she felt the same. And when she eventually moved out to LA with her then boyfriend, we just became fast friends and just felt like we could go deep almost right away. We felt comfortable, we felt safe, and we were going through it, and to be able to really like share that with one another and feel like just comforted was really special. And then we started the podcast very soon after we became friends. So we were really nurturing our friendship and building the podcast at the same time, which we didn't always do a good job of, mainly nurturing our friendship. Because when the podcast started to take off and we really were taking it very seriously and the business side very seriously, so much stuff comes up when you're an entrepreneur. Like it is going to be a mirror for all of your stuff. And to do it with your best friend, that's like double whammy. So it wasn't always easy. We definitely bring up a lot in one another, but for a purpose. That's why we're together. That's why we're best friends. That's part of being in a conscious relationship, is that you're going to bring some stuff up for each other in a real way. And it's not always going to be comfortable, but you just know on a soul level that you must stay and you must grow through this. And so we've been in therapy together. We've had coaches. We've just committed to showing up and respecting one another and taking self-responsibility and learning how to communicate really clearly and respectfully and like how to have conflict in a healthy way. So I'm so thankful, for all the awkward moments we've had and tough times. Like the good far outweighs the uncomfortable. And it's just been a model for me as far as like how deep and how beautiful I want friendships to be.
What have you learned about like maintaining friendships when it comes to other friends you have made in your life, like letting go of ones that no longer align with you? Have you had that during that phase as well, or maybe you're dealing with this now?
We have a chapter in the book called Friendship 2.0, and we talk about this idea that like not every friend is meant to be a forever friend.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we're programmed when we're younger that like, okay, your friends are going to be your friends for life. The saying like BFF for life, like that's what it is. And then when seemingly they're not, it becomes heartbreaking and it becomes, this like severe judgment on yourself or on the other person. And the reality is that the nature of relationships is that they do ebb and flow, and some of them aren't meant to last forever. I don't know who said it, but that, relationships are for either a reason, a season, or a lifetime, and maybe a combination of two, but it's really, really true. And so you have to be very attuned to how your friends make you feel. And really, are you able to be yourself? Are you able to grow with one another? It doesn't mean you need to grow in the same way, but are you committed to growth? Are you able to take self-responsibility and just be aware of what you're bringing to moments and conversations and experiences? And I think for me, if all of that is on the table, that's a forever friend, And then there are some friends where we grow apart, or one is not really willing to grow in the or be committed to their growth in the same way, and that might mean letting a friendship go. And I've had to let a lot of friends go over the years. Over the last, I would say 5 years has been like my biggest friendship letting go season, and it was so necessary, and I say that with a lot of love. And, I loved these people and I still love them actually, like I just understand why they were in my life and the purpose there and how beautiful that was and how there was an ending, and that's okay too. And how do you know if you should let a friend go? There's a million reasons. I think, being very in tune with how people make you feel. When you leave them, are you drained? Are you questioning yourself? Do you feel icky? If this friend is really unable to see why they are the way that they are and take responsibility, I think that's an issue. Yeah. And I do think friendship should be reciprocal. I don't think it's always going to be equal because people go through different seasons, whether it's like motherhood or someone goes through a loss or grief. And it's just, you're not always going to be able to give the same and receive the same, but it should be reciprocal, and you'll know if that feels good and healthy. You have to trust yourself there. So trust yourself when you feel like it might be time to let a friend go, and also trust how you feel you should do it. You might have a conversation with them. It might be a very clear conversation. It might be a little hard, but it might be clear. And then other times it might just be like letting go energetically and not needing to make like a verbal statement about it. Maybe you've like drifted and you haven't spoken in a few months, and maybe this just feels for now like the proper break.
Let's dive a bit more into what it's like being in your 30s and how you're feeling these days, being a mom as well. So before we get to your book, I'm very curious, what was there like a moment when you thought, I finally made it through my Saturn return? Or maybe what changed for you when that realization came? Was it maybe even around the time you met your husband?
Great question. You know, I actually don't know the date that I ended my Saturn return, but I think for me, when I look back, I know that, a big part of my Saturn return was my experience being single. I was single for about 6-7 years, and I had this just beautiful shift within myself where for so long I was chasing after the wrong people, people who affirmed about me what I thought about myself, which was that I was like not really worthy of love. And it's funny because I didn't consciously know that I believed that, but it was a subconscious belief. And when I decided to start dating myself and really treat this single season as sacred and an opportunity to get to know myself better and trust myself and love myself and basically become who I wanted to be for the rest of my life and in relationship, just that magnet. And it changed me. And I really believe that that piece around, wow, I really love spending time with myself. And, I would go on solo dates and solo trips and just, I really leaned in. It was that internal piece that actually was the attraction point for when my husband and I reconnected. Because I remember that feeling on a solo trip. I was like, I'm good. If I never meet him, I'm good. Like I knew I was going to meet someone, but I had that internal piece of like, wow, I'm here. Like I never thought I'd get here where I just feel so, so, so good with myself.
Well, it's just quiet probably, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's so loud all the time. And then you have that moment where like, oh, actually there's nothing there. It's just good.
It's pure, and 2 months later I reconnected with my now husband, and it was just, and I was so clear when I reconnected with him. Like, I just was like, oh, this is my person. This is crazy. And I think it's because I had done that work, in those years and just gotten so clear about who I am. And so when he came in, I was like, oh, wow, this is obvious. I didn't even question it. Not one moment, which is pretty crazy because for years I had questioned everything I did. But it was just the best. It was the best feeling. So that kind of felt like kind of the button or the end of my Saturn return. And then,
So let's finally talk about your book you guys wrote together. So what really inspired you to write it, and what was the process like?
Yeah, this book is the book that we wish we had when we were going through our Saturn return or going through this transition in our late 20s into our 30s. And it's also a book for anyone moving through change, Like I've spoken to 50-year-old women who picked up this book and are like, I might be embarrassed to tell you this, but this book is absolutely applicable to my life. And that's because we're moving through change, everybody. Like, and also, it is very human to lose ourselves sometimes, and need that reminder and need the handhold to walk back to ourselves. So this is a guide for people to remember who they are, to remember that they are not behind, they are becoming. And it is comprehensive. Like this is a full meal book, It is my stories, Krista's stories, our experiences in the realms of body and relationships and spirituality and career and purpose. And we share just incredible wisdom from guests throughout the years. We sprinkle that throughout the book, as well as like very tactical tools and practices that you can start today. So I know this book is going to find the people that need it, and it's going to be incredibly impactful, and one of those books that you can really open to any page and get something from, and open at any point in your life and get something from. I'd also say, just on like the tactical piece of this book, there's so many tactical pieces, but there's a chapter that I wrote on money and finances and the energy of money that, I shared some stories that, were very like hard for me to share, like a lot of shame around money in my 20s, but I think it's important. So many people have shame around their money and debt and handling money. And I really think that we can employ some very unsexy things to be able to move with our money in a very sexy way. So I think that chapter is one that's going to surprise people and empower people. And then also Krista wrote an incredible chapter on the body. You know, her relationship with the body is one that she's talked about a lot on the show. And it's such an important conversation. Our body is the antenna, you know, of our life. It's picking up on so much. It's sending us messages. It is so intuitive. It is like of God, you know, and in those early years in your 20s, like, oh man, I don't know about you, but I was just abusing my body, like not listening to it, drinking too much, you know, binge eating, like sexually just kind of all over the place. Like it was just like a wild time. And to connect now with my body is just like one of the greatest gifts ever. And I'm in just deep, deep, deep reverence for my body. So I think that will also surprise people, how that relationship with your body will change everything.
Yeah, for me, my body now is really my priority, my mental health and my physical health. And if someone asks me if I want to go out on a Friday night, I'm really thinking, I'm not sure. I'm not
how
sure
do I
if
want to feel?
Exactly. I'm not sure how I want to feel the next day. Do I want to feel aligned with myself, or do I want to just be on my couch for half the day? And I've been really stepping away from alcohol like the last year. Especially London is such a drinking and pub culture. And at the beginning it's fun, and I moved in summer, everyone's out drinking, and I did not have that thought about this might not be good also for my mental health. So now I've kind of changed in those couple of years, and I'm really stepping back from it. And even things like, this might be picky now, but even things like coffee, I'm so sensitive. I realize I'm such a sensitive person, my body, my mind, so I need to be very sensitive with what I'm consuming.
Definitely.
So during the week now, I only drink matcha, and then I feel so much better. I don't have any crashes during lunch. I'm anxiety free almost. So, and when I drink coffee during the weekend, because I don't want to limit myself too much, I can still tell that it's not really great for my anxiety levels. And I guess you can open up the conversation about meat and everything as well. But I feel like for now, it's just really, okay, let me think about what does my body need? What does my mind need? And then I can come back to you with an answer.
Yes. I wrote a chapter in the book called The Power of Nourishment, and I talk about coffee, I talk about alcohol, I just talk about like kind of this disconnection that has happened between ourselves and our body, and what we put in it and on it and around us, and how we consume. And we just have to become really aware of how it makes us feel. Like, it's kind of a novel idea, but like, you know, I think the coffee thing is so interesting because it's such a ritual. It's a beautiful ritual. It's a fun ritual. It's people love the taste. I love the taste. Like, it's a comfort. Some people like it for the energy it gives you, but like, I don't feel amazing when I have a very particular type of coffee that I drink and what I put in it, and it's one a day, and it doesn't give me the buzz. But when I go out, like if I'm out and I just grab like a nice coffee somewhere, I'm like, oh my God, like I feel so different. And I'm like, dang it, like that's not how I want to feel. And I'll still do it sometimes. And I'm like, why am I still doing it? You know? So, you know, it's not perfect, but we just have to get really attuned and make the decisions aligned with like what our body is telling us we need. And by the way, everybody's body is different. So this chapter is not prescriptive. Yeah. It's just kind of like pointing to some things that we can look at, you know?
Mm-hmm. So what are you currently learning or unlearning or kind of working through? Is it different from, let's say, when you guys started the podcast? Is there any particular topic you're working through at the moment? Maybe even motherhood. Yeah. I mean, you're quite new to it. Is there anything that maybe even realizations you're having?
Yeah, I think I'm just in this like kind of unknown, yet again. I've been in many unknown seasons of unknown, and I feel much more comfortable being in an unknown season now in my late 30s than I did in my 20s, because I have proof that it's okay to not know. And the type of unknown I'm in now is just, having a child completely changes your life. In my experience, it did at least. And my priorities have changed, and how I want to show up here on social media and in public has changed. And I just don't know what's next in terms of like, there's a part of me that just wants to like be with my family and really like tend to my family in a real way. But then there's also a part of me that's incredibly creative and is happy when she's creating. And so what is that? What am I creating, And so yeah, lots of unknown. And I'm just in the practice of living the question and really leaning in and not needing to force an answer and trusting the timing of everything.
That's beautiful. Before we wrap up, at the end of every episode, I like to kind of take a final moment to turn inward with a quick breathing exercise. So what I like to do is, it's called the 4-7-8 breath. Let's just do 5 quick rounds, and then we can go out of this conversation and feel good and aligned. So whenever you're ready, close your eyes. And let's start with the 5 rounds. Breathe in. And whenever you're ready, open your eyes. Thank you so much. With that, we check out of the Meditation Motel for now, but the doors are always open for our next conversation. Thank you so much. It was wonderful.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you.